All right, so welcome to Running Engaging Virtual Meetings. Before we begin, it's important to note that this semester we will be requiring all student organizations meetings to be held virtual. This is the safest for you, obviously. This is also going to allow us, with our very limited space on our campus, to be used for other small programs that maybe your organization might want to hold and other needs that we have for the semester. Virtual meetings don't have to be seen as a waste of time. I think some people feel like they don't get enough accomplished at virtual meetings, but this is the new normal for us. So in fact, virtual meetings can be more valuable than traditional face-to-face meetings. While we're currently forced into a situation right now where we need to rely on virtual meetings, in a normal semester, we can actually view virtual meetings as an opportunity to have more participation for people like commuters and those with busy schedules who may not be able to travel to campus. So that's something also important to really keep in mind here. All right. So I'm going to get started talking about what a virtual meeting should really look like and give you some tips on how to have it be as effective as possible. So the first step really to driving an engagement in your virtual meetings to really get people to actively participate needs to happen long before the meeting actually happens. I say long before, I really mean a few days before, a week before, as long as it's not like 2 hours before, right? So before what you want to think about is make sure to create the Zoom link, obviously well in advance, right? And I'm using Zoom as I'm going to keep saying Zoom, using Zoom, but whatever technology you decide to use, although Stockton is providing you all Zoom accounts. So make sure you create the Zoom link well in advance and send it out to participants with the meeting agenda, okay? And I have this quote here: if you want your members to be engaged during your meeting, help them show up ready to engage, right? This is from the author of Meet Like You Mean It, A Leader's Guide to Painless and Productive Virtual Meetings, right? So some people were ahead of their time and thought about this long ago as Zoom and Skype and all these things already happened. So there's actually books and resource guides on having effective virtual meetings, right? So the easiest way to do this really is to start with your agenda. So having that meeting agenda ahead of time is extremely important. By sending this key information ahead of time, ideally at least a few days before the scheduled meeting, people are coming into your meeting knowing why they're there, being prepared for it, and then when you're in the meeting, you actually know what to expect in terms of the process and the outcome, all of which can lead to an increased level of engagement during your actual meeting, right? So according to the research, your meeting agenda should include the following: the purpose of the meeting, basically, why are you having this meeting? All right, it might be a weekly meeting that you have. I don't know, this semester it might be every 2 weeks, whatever you decide as an organization. But really, if you're going to have meetings, make sure you have, this is why we're talking about the agenda, that there's a purpose. Maybe you're trying to come up with programs for this semester, or you have a program coming up next week and you need to discuss it, right? So what is the purpose of that meeting? Number two is, what is the desired outcome of the meeting? So at the end of this meeting, what do you want to get accomplished? All right, number two. Meeting format and expectations, right? A lot of us started meeting in the spring, so maybe these are things you've already thought about, but think about the meeting format and expectations. Just because we're not meeting in person doesn't mean we should throw Robert's rules out of the window and all these other things. So how are you going to run the meeting? What are your expectations for members? Are they allowed to just talk freely whenever they want? Do you want them to use the chat feature or the raise your hand feature to talk, right? These are some things that you should figure out as an organization, as an e-board or president of your organization, to kind of figure out how this meeting's going to run smoothly, right? So make sure you present those expectations to your members. Meeting logistics, meeting time, login details, etc. So as a part of your meeting agenda, maybe you send it 3 or 4 days out in advance. Make sure it includes the Zoom link, the login details, day and time, all that information just on that one sheet to make it really easy for your members, okay? And then participant expectations, right? So we talked about how the meeting would kind of run, but what are your expectations for what topics and things you're trying to accomplish at that meeting are. Is there anything that you want your members to look at? Maybe you have subcommittees in your organization, people that are working on a specific program or event, right? So what do you expect from those members? What do you need accomplished before that meeting so that they're prepared when they get to the meeting to provide that information, to give the report, ready to discuss whatever is at hand that day, okay? It's also very important, as you see on this bottom part, give your members some say in the agenda and in the meeting itself. If meetings are constantly thrust upon people and they have no control, their desire to engage is diminished, right? So it's extremely important in terms of shared leadership, in a democratic process, that prior to finalizing your agenda, to talk to your officers, to talk to whoever's a leader in the organization. If they have any agenda items that they want to send to you to include on the agenda, make sure they're a part of that process, right? It's extremely important to share that leadership with them, to make them feel as if they're actually an integral part, that they're gonna have their say in the meeting. So it's important that that agenda comes together as a team. All right, so now it's time to actually meet. So here are the things that you want to think about when it's time to actually meet, right? The first thing you want to do is test the technology. Funny thing is, before this meeting, I was trying to make sure Zoom was working, right? Because that's testing the technology. And I was clicking on the wrong link, and I couldn't figure out how to make myself the host, right? So this is why we do this. Because if I did this at the last second and I logged in right at 10 o'clock, we would have started late because I couldn't figure out what I was doing at the time, right? So it's important to log in a little bit early, right? The meeting leader should log in no less than 10 minutes before the meeting is scheduled to really test that technology and make sure everything is working properly, okay? And then tip, play some upbeat music as members wait for the meeting to start. Right, so I logged in 10 minutes early. I played one of my favorite bands, was listening to, just to kind of present like a waiting room for people as they log in, and it's not just awkwardly quiet, and so that's important too. That's just it's a tip that I like to do before starting any kind of program. All right, make video a must. What I mean by this, since everyone on the call is separated by distance, the best thing you can do to make everyone at least feel like they're in the same room is to use video. I know a lot of folks like to turn their video off and they want to participate, but they don't want to be seen, okay? Understandable, but video makes people feel more engaged because it allows your members to see each other's emotions and reactions, which immediately humanizes the room, right? And I think that's really important. We're not in a normal situation this semester, being forced to use this technology, right? So we want to make people as comfortable as possible to feel really engaged, as if we were on campus, we were face to face. So this helps in asking your members to all keep their video on, right? No longer are they just voices on a phone line. They're the faces of your members together, interacting. That's really important. Without video, you'll never know if the dead silence in a virtual meeting is happening because somebody is not paying attention, or they're rolling their eyes, or that they're nodding their head in agreement, right? So you want to be able to see people and their facial expressions, right? Facial expressions matter. Also, if you have a member who is hard of hearing or deaf, everyone being on video is extremely helpful for them, all right? So that's important to think about too. Now, do not worry, and I have to note this, do not worry about Zooming from your bedroom. You have a mess in the background, you're wearing pajamas, you have your children running around, right? Again, this is all fine. I think sometimes we're too hard on ourselves, like we need to have a green screen and a beautiful background. A lot of the time I have a background up just because it's fun, but the reality is, we're gonna be on Zoom meetings for class, or in Zoom meetings for organization, right? We might have just done, yard work, or we're cleaning up and we feel like we're a mess and our room is a mess. That's okay, right? Whatever makes you feel comfortable, but I just want to let you know that that is perfectly fine, okay? This is our new reality, and I think we can cut each other some slack and all be comfortable, right? None of us are Zooming from the Today Show stage in New York City, so it's all right, okay? But make video a must. It mimics the experience of an in-person meeting. It's automatically going to feel more personal and engaging than a meeting where all you see are screens and not faces. So if you want your members to be more engaged during that virtual meeting, make video a must. Co-facilitate, right? Whenever possible, make sure there are more than one meeting facilitator. Not only does this help keep members' attention, it promotes shared leadership. So I talked earlier about how to work through your agenda, creating your agenda with your team. I think this is also an opportunity to ensure that when you follow Robert's rules, you're actually doing officer reports and such. So that way there's shared leadership, and it's not just the president of the organization who's talking the entire meeting, right? So you have different officers in your organization who are responsible for whatever they're responsible for. They lead that section. It also breaks up the meeting a little bit because people don't want to listen to the same person for an hour straight, right? That's just reality. So if you can kind of share that responsibility, that's always a good tip. Get everyone involved, right? So some of your members are naturally going to be more engaged and talkative during virtual meetings, right? On the other hand, if you have members who are more introverted, it might be harder for them to speak up. As a leader, it's your job to make sure that those people are just as engaged and have just as many opportunities to contribute during your virtual team meetings as the more outspoken members of your organization. During the meeting, take stock of everyone's participation levels. And if you notice a few members dominating conversation, make sure to interject to give other people an opportunity to engage. I don't know about you, but I think this happens pretty often. I actually spent the weekend in a lot of virtual meetings for an organization I'm a part of, and it always seems like the same 2 or 3 people are always talking. And that happens in person too, right? But it's important for us to note that while we're also in virtual meetings to kind of make sure everyone else is involved and everyone else has their ability to speak up and to say, right? I'm naturally an introvert, so if you talk to anyone else on our staff, I'm usually the one in our staff meetings who's quiet and doesn't say much, because that's just kind of me. But it's hard for me to speak up in situations where there's other people that are always talking, because I'm always like, when's it my turn to speak, right? So I end up being quiet. So, it's important for leaders and organizations to try to get those folks involved to make sure they feel like they have a voice, right? So if members seem shy or reluctant to participate, let them know they can send a private message to the meeting facilitator with their idea. You can even read it out loud anonymously if that makes them feel more comfortable, right? So use that chat feature, right? So people can send a private chat to you as chapter president and say, hey, I wanted to ask this question, and then you can read it out loud. You don't even need to say who it came from, right? That's up to you how you figure that out. But again, it's important to think about how to get people involved to make them feel more comfortable to be involved in the virtual meeting setting. All right, so this is key. In a virtual meeting, you need to stop regularly to take everyone's temperature. No pun intended during COVID, right? And I do mean everyone. Go right around the list, asking each person for input. So this is something you should probably do more often in in-person meetings when we return to that setting. But particularly from a virtual standpoint, I think it's even more important. Again, trying to get everyone to participate. So when you are having conversations and you might have those 2 or 3 people that are the most vocal and basically they're running the conversation, for you to say, hey, how are you, what's your opinion on this? Or ask people around the room that are not really saying anything to reach out to them, okay? I think that's extremely important to get people involved, right? And what you want to do there is create interaction. So one tip I have for you is to use breakout rooms and create meaningful interaction and activities. So if your club organization has 25 people logging in, you might not have everybody participating, everyone interacting, because 25 is a lot of people to have on a Zoom screen, right? You feel like you have the Brady Bunch screen up. So you can create more meaningful interaction in smaller groups. So using a breakout room feature and doing like a simple 3 to 5 minute breakout helps keep the energy alive and keeps members participating. So say you're spending some time at a meeting talking about How can we do this virtual carnival, right? As an example. So instead of having a giant conversation with all 25 people, why don't you put 5 people in 5 different rooms and give everybody 5 minutes to kind of talk about it, and then the 5 groups can come back together and share what ideas they had as a larger group, right? Help spur interaction. Smaller groups, people are more likely to talk. So think about those kind of things too. Again, things you can do in person as well, but I think have a really practical application when we're talking about doing virtual meetings. So as I already mentioned, use the features of the technology. I already mentioned that chat feature, right? Maybe they use the chat feature for members to ask questions, to share resources, right? Oftentimes, if I'm talking about, hey, I read this article, it's really interesting, and it relates to what we're doing as an organization, I might share the link for that article in the chat feature, right? Make sure you're using all the features of the technology, right? It can be extremely important. Use those breakout rooms like I mentioned. Mute those not speaking, right? So it's important, again, I think if you think about how you're gonna run your meeting and when people are allowed to talk so that we don't have all 25 people talking over each other, you can use the raise hand feature in Zoom, or someone can type their question into the chat. But allow, when it's somebody's turn to speak, that they're the only person that's unmuted. So mute everybody else, right? Use those features so that this doesn't become a problem. Screen sharing. I'm sharing my screen with you right now to share this presentation. So that's something that you can do too. So if you're working on something and you have a Google Doc up and you're typing notes, you want everyone to see that. I've seen that being done so that you can get real-time kind of minutes from the meeting and notes. Maybe you have a presentation or a workshop, so you're sharing a PowerPoint like I'm doing, right? You have the ability to share your screen, and that can open you up to do a lot of different things in your virtual meeting. And then there's even a polling option. So if you needed to vote on something, you just wanted to, again, get the temperature of everyone in the room and get their thoughts, you can use the polling feature to do that as well. So I think with the polling feature, it's kind of anonymous on their end of what their vote is, but you as the host can actually get the breakdown of who voted which way. All right, but it gives you an ability to do that within the Zoom meeting, so that's a really cool feature as well. Time, right? This is something I often talk about when talking about running effective meetings in general. But keep your meetings short and moving. Just like in face-to-face situations, you want to keep your meetings short and moving. So I often tell folks, this is going to be the meeting start time, and this is going to be the meeting end time. And the reason why I do that is because you set up an expectation that we're going to finish our business by this time, because we want to be cognizant of people's personal time, right? We might have to go do some schoolwork. We might have to go to our job. We have other stuff going on in our lives. So you're going to get better interaction and participation from members if they know that they only have to be at the meeting from this time to this time, and they won't feel awkward if they have to slip out, which is probably easier for them to do on Zoom than it is in real life. But I think it's it's something that shows kind of respect for your members in a subtle way. I'm going to get you out of here by this time. This is how long our meeting is. If we don't reach everything on the agenda, then we'll move it to next time. Okay. And keep the meeting moving. So again, how you run the meeting, not allowing people to speak over each other, and kind of coming up with that solution for how you're going to keep things going is going to be really helpful to make sure you stay on task. And use Robert's rules. Just because we're not in person doesn't mean that we shouldn't use Robert's rules. So again, that will really help you in terms of running the meeting in a really productive way with people not talking over each other, and following procedures that'll be helpful in making sure things run smoothly. And if you are doing a longer meeting, maybe you're doing a retreat in the next couple weeks leading up to school, add breaks. So I would say if you're doing anything that is longer than an hour, you need to have a break every hour, right? Even if it's for 5-10 minutes, to allow people to get up, to go to the bathroom, grab something to eat, whatever they need to do, right? So something to think about. Regular club meetings, my opinion, should never go over an hour. So hopefully yours don't. If they do, that's something to look at too. Like, why are they going so long? If you're adding activities and stuff like that, then I think that's different, that's separate. But just handling business, you know, meetings really shouldn't be that long. So you got to figure out how you can condense that, be productive in a shorter amount of time. But if it's longer, add those breaks in, okay? It doesn't matter how engaging you are as a speaker or how exciting your meeting agenda may be. No one, including your remote organization, wants to sit in a virtual group meeting for hours at a time doing and listening to the same thing. So that's why if you're having a longer virtual meeting, it's important to break those things up. Okay. So before closing out your meeting, here are a couple things that you should do. Make a copy of the chat transcript. So oftentimes, if you're using the chat feature in Zoom, you have questions in there, people are chatting with each other. That might be important to the minutes or to remember what people are talking about. So make sure you copy and paste that into a Word document. You keep that chat transcript. It's just a tip, right? And then secondly, share your screen and post a slide of the next meeting date and time. So, you know, you can share your screen, as I said, just put up a simple slide like I have up right now with, you know, our next meeting is on this date at this time. I'm going to send out a Zoom link soon, you know, and just, you know, thank everybody for coming to the meeting. Okay. Simple thing that you can do is just really nice and helpful. All right. So in conclusion, I kind of created a simple slide here to kind of wrap things up. I'll mention that this, in relation to having a virtual meeting, it's always good to have a quick wrap up. So at the end of your virtual meeting, kind of go over quickly, right? This is what we discussed. These are our tasks for the next meeting, right? And just kind of wrap things up for everyone. So here's me wrapping up this program, okay? Again, some of the things we talked about today. Prepare and send out an agenda ahead of time. Make sure everyone uses their video. Involve everyone and create opportunities for interaction. Use all the Zoom features you can if it helps you, right? Those chat features and the polling features. Stay on task and take breaks as needed, right? And again, use that chat feature and remember to save it at the end, okay? So that is the end of my presentation, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Joe, there were a few questions that came up in the chat, and I answered one of them, but I figured I would read it out loud and talk about it just because it's being recorded, and this way anybody who watches the session later can also hear the question. So one of the questions was about the poll feature, and if you could set that up ahead of time. And I haven't personally used the polling feature before, but I know that when you go into Zoom to create the meeting, there is an option at the bottom to add different poll questions. So I don't know if anybody else on here has used that feature before, or Joe, if you've used it, and can offer any other insight to the polling option.
I think you have to add the questions as you go. That's the only way that I've used it in the past. But if it's really easy, if you set up at the Zoom meeting and you just want to play with it, when you click polls at the bottom of your screen, a simple thing comes up that actually says just add a question. You click on that, you type it in, and you can create your answers, and then you can add questions. So I want to say that if you log in early to your meeting, you can set up the poll before you even start. So that's another reason to log in earlier. But if you're discussing something new comes up that you didn't plan on discussing or plan on having that poll, then you can quickly just type it in and set it up as you're moving along. Very simple.
Great. And then there was another question about how you stream your music before, as you're waiting for participants to join your meeting.
So I actually just had my microphone on and was playing Spotify from my computer, and I had it loud enough so you could hopefully hear
it. Joe, I thought it did a great, because it was more background music sounding. I will throw out a tip there that they're in the sound settings. If you're playing like a video through your presentation and you wanted it to be louder and clearer, there is a share audio button on the host site.
Yes.
Yeah, but I actually liked it, like I said, the way you're doing it, because it felt like I could say, "Hi, Lauren," when I got here, you know, background music.
Wasn't super loud, yeah.
Yeah.
I had a question too. For the breakout feature, is that like a feature or is that like something separate, like a separate link?
No, so if you're the host of a Zoom meeting, the bottom of your screen, you're actually going to have different features on the bottom of your screen. So I'm the host of this meeting, so I can see all the participants. I get a participant list. I have the poll button. I have the chat feature like all of you have. I have the share screen feature. And then and reactions like all of you have. And then if you click on, there's a thing that says more. You'll actually get the ability to record the meeting as we're doing right now for our YouTube page, and then breakout rooms. So if I click on breakout rooms, it's going to bring me to, it's going to pop up a page that has all the participants in it, and you can put people into rooms specifically. It'll help you, just if you want it to be just random, you can set it up really quickly that way. And it's actually very quick to use. Zoom is really great because I think they kind of thought a lot of this stuff through. So it's not going to be taking a lot of time for you to set up the breakout room. You can pretty much do it in 10 seconds if you wanted to.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to post some links in the chat because somebody actually had just forwarded me a resource on how to set them up. So I'll post the 2 articles in the chat in case you wanted to explore how to do that.
Awesome.
I had a quick question. Because I'm from the Stockton Disney Association, and a lot of the times we did like crafts and stuff in person. I don't know if it's like responsible to like ask people to like buy materials to do stuff like that. So what would be like an alternative to doing stuff like that?
That's an interesting question. I think, giving people the opportunity to do that if they wanted to, right? It's not like you're forcing people to go and participate and buy those materials. But I think all of us in student development, think that's actually a really great idea. If people have the money and are willing to do that, and to everyone hop on Zoom and you can do crafts on your own in your own space. I mean, that's a fun thing to do. Yeah, that's one of the.
I was going to say all of your budgets are still alive and well. And so even if the Disney Association wanted to purchase crafts and maybe have, a craft kit that everybody could pick up for their meeting. So I know some people might be on campus, some people might be virtual, but if maybe, if you meet every Wednesday night, maybe Monday is the day, Monday or Tuesday, they can come by and pick up their craft kit, and then this way they're ready for Wednesday. Or maybe you could mail them out if it's something small enough. Something else that I've seen are like the downloadable craft things. And so if it's something that you can just download the file and people can print it at home or print out the instructions, print out a supply list, that's another way to kind of get that information to them in an easy way, and still allow them to participate.
I don't have a question, but I have a tip from one of the last meetings that I think is really nice to share. So Joe, you mentioned that like everyone should not be embarrassed of what they have going on in the background. But in addition to that, you should definitely make it part of your meetings, because like that's one of the best ways to make it keep going, because you can always be like, look, I got a cat. And then, because there's no awkward silence when everyone's like, oh, let me go get my dog. Let me show you what I have. And then everyone feels like they're involved. And also, who doesn't want to look at people's pets?
Mm-hmm.
And your pets are going to involve themselves anyway, so you might as well bring them in.
I don't know if I'm dating myself here, but if every clubs and organizations that get to know each other, members, it would be fun to do MTV Cribs and everybody show their space.
Yes, exactly. My cat made me ask. He's threatening me.
Honestly, my dog would stop saying my door, but here. He was just standing.
Evan, it's really hard to hear you. I don't know. Can you type out your question? You sounded a little bit robot-ish.
I heard something about a dog.
Oop, hopefully he pops back in.
So actually, that's another good tip. The host should always remember that they have the ability to mute someone. And you know, we've been doing a lot of business meetings, obviously, and you know, it just takes a moment to be like, oh, hey, Gabby, your feedback is coming through your computer. I'm going to mute you. Wave your hand if you need to be unmuted. You know, it's a very like non-confrontational way to be like, continue the meeting along, but understand that there is a disruption.
Right. Well, and I think kind of going along with that, so Joe made me co-host as he started this meeting. And so as more people were logging in, he was focused on his presentation and presenting, but I was kind of looking through at the participant list and making sure anybody who wasn't already muted was muted. Just so this way it kind of prevented any distractions from happening. Some of the other things, and maybe this is more of presentation tips rather than meeting tips, but since you're all going to be kind of living in this virtual world for a little bit, I imagine that, you know, you're not only going to be running meetings, but you're also going to be doing class presentations and group projects and things like that. And so it is really helpful if you can partner up, as Joe said, with somebody to serve as your co-host. There's a lot that goes on in Zoom. I feel like I'm so easily distracted when I'm trying to present because there's a chat box to monitor. There's you know, participants who might have to be muted. If you create your meeting and you have the like the waiting room feature, which basically allows you to accept people to your meeting, or on the other hand, you can kick them out. So, you know, just kind of helping to manage all that. This way, you know, the person who is in charge of presenting or running the meeting can start doing that without worrying about all these extra distractions. There was something else I was going to say too, but I can't remember right now, so I'll stop talking.
Are there any other questions? Gabby shared that everyone's pets can be inducted as club members if you're looking for a cute little activity. Have you?
I also.
Oh, go ahead, Kate.
Oh, go ahead. You can finish.
I was going to say, we ran an election for our favorite pet of our office to get everyone introduced to the voting features of the online systems. So, you know, it's okay to play. You know, that's really the thing is, if at a regular club meeting, you would have sat around for 20 minutes and talked about your pets, who's dating who, and that's okay in a virtual meeting too. You know, just make sure that you do what Joe said. You have that agenda, and at one point you say, okay, everyone, we're going to do the agenda now.
So yeah, so my other question is, for the student account for Zoom, is there like a certain limit of time, or is it like, do you have a certain amount of like limited time when we create a meeting with our student account for Zoom?
So currently, I believe that the limit is 40 minutes. But I know that Stockton has been talking about working with Zoom to upgrade the student accounts so that this way you have more access and more time. I don't think that that's happened yet. I think that they're still in that contracted process. But our hope is that by September, when you all return, that feature will be up and running so that you can have more time available, because 40 minutes is not even the full length of a club meeting.
Thank
I have
you.
confirmation that the negotiations are still going on, and excuse me, and Stockton is still aggressively pursuing getting all the students an upgraded account.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking to host a meeting like today or this week, you can use Google Hangouts. I think Google Meet is another feature that you can use. I'm not sure if there's any other platforms out there that other folks have been using.
And all the employees have the upgraded account, so they can actually set the meeting and make you co-host.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, but we can only host one meeting at a time.
Right. So one of the other things, I think Joe had started to talk about this a little bit, but when you go into your Zoom account and you create a meeting, you know, obviously you share that link with all of your participants, and that's the link that they all click to log in. But as the host, you have to go back to like your main Zoom page and click the link to start the meeting, and that's how you become the host. So if you're clicking the link that you send to everybody else, you're joining the meeting as a participant, and you're not able to record or share your screen and do all those fun features. So if for some reason, I know Joe had mentioned like, oh, I kind of logged in early to test things out. That's what happened. And so just be mindful of that too, that if things aren't working the way that they should be working as a host, get out of the meeting and then make sure that you go to the main Zoom page where you went to create your meeting, and start it that way instead.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, well, we thank everybody for coming today and participating. We'll be posting this video on YouTube, on our channel. If you have not yet followed our, subscribe to our YouTube channel, please do so. You can just search for Stockton Student Development. We're going to be doing a lot more of these virtual trainings and programs. So, please come to the next one. I believe we have one.
Next Tuesday is Osprey Hub 101. And then the Tuesday after that, which is August 25th, we're going to be doing one where you can preview what the virtual Get Involved Fair will look like and how to participate in that. And we're also going to cover different recruitment tips. So how to recruit new members in a digital environment.
And I
So
think
that's
I'm hosting
August 25th.
next week, right?
What's that?
Am I hosting next week?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try and bring a dog or a cat.